I love books and I read voraciously, but what I love most is the whole tactile experience of a book. There's always an element of feeling a bit lost when you've had a great book and you've reached the end of it and perhaps you realise there isn't any more, that person didn't write anymore. So I kind of hoarded them. And then I thought, well, that's really kind of sad. It's lost its life. And I guess it might have been about the same time as I had that idea that I started playing with them. And folding and cutting. I'd always been interested in things like origami. So it was a process of play, really, and then realising that the actual book could still remain a book, but I could translate it into something else, which was a whole new experience. It was an object, and it became a work of art, and a very tactile one, but very different from actually being a book. So that's really where it all started, and gradually as time's gone on I've got more and more skilled and more elaborate with the ways I cut and fold, and they can then have another life. So I guess you could say it's a life after reading. More recently I just become interested in the interplay of colours and shapes, so it's become very abstract, and so I'll experiment a lot in terms of what goes on in my paintings. The paper sculpture has been a relatively recent thing, I suppose about 3 or 4 years, and that came about from a love of structure, and I very much home in on three-dimensional design and architecture, interesting architecture. But I always wanted to include elements of my painting and design as well, so what I've done is merge the two together to produce the sculptures. The way I make a sculpture is, well, I start with the book obviously, but I am a bit nerdy about that because I actually have to find the right book. So that means I get to hang around in second-hand bookshops a lot, and I have to look at things like the spine and the way it's put together, because all of that will contribute towards whether the book will turn itself into a sculpture or not. So my process of folding and cutting, gradually as the pages are folded and cut, it will increase the quantity and it will make the spine flex. But it doesn't necessarily work every time, so there's always an element of risk in it. It's really important to me that what I produce has integrity and is the best I can do. It's not necessarily important to me that I make a living out of it. And I think that's great actually, because I think that gives you a freedom to produce work that means something to you and is not produced for a particular market. I mean, that said, I'm pretty excited about some of the other things I could get involved in. So for instance, I'm going to study a little bit more digital design so that I can use some of the pattern making that I have to create potentially more commercial products. But I still think it's important to come back to your roots and keep asking yourself, why am I doing this? And what's important, and stick to that.